Hey, this is Charles Linden, talking to you about health anxiety. Okay, where do I start with this? I could start with 1972 when I developed health anxiety. Um, in 1972, I was nearly 4 years old, and I guess I always knew that there was something different about me. I felt very different as a child. I was always very shy, very timid, shied away from anything that represented threat or danger. So I think I always understood that I had something that other people didn't have. They just didn't look as scared as I did all the time. But then in 1972, I was at school. It was a convent school, which is strange, because I'm not Catholic. So why I was there, I don't know. But ultimately, I was there in a room which was the PE hall, having my lunch, eating my crisp breads and soup. Yeah, my cruel parents used to send me to school with crisp breads and soup, and I had a small orange thermos flask, which was at that time. For those of you of my age, you'll remember that they were pretty much made of glass, and if you dropped them, they broke. um, I had tomato soup in mine. I dropped it and it broke. And from that day on, having seen the glass in the soup, I sieved my food through my teeth to avoid any kind of contamination or danger from food. And I did that till I was 26 years old. The reason I tell you this is that that's not directly related to what you would call health anxiety. I developed health anxiety later, but the obsessive compulsive behaviors that that form of OCD and eating disorder set up gave rise to other forms of anxiety in me. So I went from that kind of sieving food through my teeth because of contamination and the danger that represented to being agoraphobic, monophobic, to have severe health anxiety, eating disorder, panic disorder, uh, agoraphobia, monophobia, emetophobia, which is fear of vomiting, fear of swallowing, fear of dying, fear of fainting. I mean, you name it, I pretty much had it in those 22 years of suffering. And it's overwhelming for any person of any age. That's overwhelming. But for a small child, I could, I just remember what it was like lying in bed at night, crying myself to sleep, not understanding why I felt like I was in a horror movie, which is pretty much how I felt most of the time. And of course, at night, it was exacerbated because I was alone in my room in the dark, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, feeling unbelievably vulnerable, tucking myself into the bed so that the monster under my bed couldn't drag me under and devour me, having horrific dreams and awful daytime dreams where I would imagine the most awful scenarios happening. It really is overwhelming, and unless you've experienced it, you just don't know. That's the thing. And so it's all very well for people to say, "Oh, yes, it's anxiety. We understand how you feel." No, you don't. Not unless you've experienced it yourself. You never will know because it is terrifying. And I mean, bear in mind, I was a small, timid kid, but I grew into quite a strapping teenager. Played rugby. I rowed competitively, as in rowing rather than riding. Um, I played high level rugby. I got myself beaten to a pulp most of the time, hence the bent nose. But ultimately, on the playing field, I was a like a man possessed. But in the changing rooms, I was terrified, even on the bus coming back from games. The health anxiety was probably the most. I had pure O as well, HOCD, which was pretty overwhelming because it was a constant. I was looking at guys thinking, what if I'm gay? Which clearly I'm not. I'm heterosexual, which is why I was having those thoughts. So those kind of thoughts go to the opposite of what you naturally are. But with health anxiety, I mean, it was constant. It was OCD compounded it because if you can separate anxiety conditions down into those categorized conditions effectively, you can see that OCD may contain different manifestations and responses to, for example, health anxiety. In that OCD sufferers might wash their hands to repetitively to avoid contamination, and it's the repetitiveness that makes it OCD. But if you think of health anxiety, they have the same thing. But they will research, for example, or check themselves for lumps, or take their blood pressure, or monitor their physical self in a way that is obsessive. But for whatever reason, psychology and psychiatry have put OCD over there and health anxiety over there, and they belong together. The responses are the same. The obsessive focus on self and well-being are the same. So they are the same condition, as are all the other anxiety conditions, by the way. All anxiety conditions are OCD because they're all obsessive, they're all compulsive, and they're all disorder, and they're all sourced in the same physiology. So health anxiety specifically sent me down a very long road of having all kinds of physical examinations, barium meals, scans, x-rays, you name it, I had it, but only because I insisted on it, really. I would have horrific chest pain and stomach pain and diarrhea and bloating. So I'd insist that the gastroenterologist at the hospital scan me for the 15th time. I'd insist that I was x-rayed to see if there were any blockages. And it was the same with my heart as my digestive system, constantly looking for a reason why I felt so awful, and then checking myself. Every morning I'd get up and it'd be like, well, okay, what can I feel now? And then checking myself physically for lumps and bumps. And there was a kind of dilemma in my head, because when you've got health anxiety, you don't want to be ill. Ultimately, the thing you need to avoid is illness. But having said that, you also want to avoid checking yourself for illness in case you find something. But then if you don't check, you won't know. So there's this whole kind of conflict going on in the subconscious between, should I check and find it? If I don't check, I won't find it, which would be better for my anxiety, but then I won't find it, and that's not good for my health. So what do I do? And it's soul destroying. You wake up every day and you're just constantly looking for a solution to all of it. If I'm not ill, I just want to know that I'm not ill. But what if I am ill? And that's the kind of constant pressure that somebody with health anxiety is under. A lot of people with health anxiety will rush to clinics and clinicians and doctors and get referrals to find out if they're ill, because they just need to know whether they're ill. But even when it's confirmed they're not ill, clinically ill in any way. Yeah, but what if they missed it? What if they didn't find it? What if, which comes to the ultimate conclusion of what I'm going to say now, is it's not about illness. Not only is it not about anxiety, because anxiety isn't an illness, it's a disordered emotion, but it's also not about the illnesses that everybody thinks that they've got. Because there was a time when I genuinely thought I'd got HIV, that was leading to AIDS, because why else would I feel so ill? I definitely got some form of cancer somewhere, but I just didn't know where. Definitely got things like Parkinson's disease or multiple sclerosis. I definitely got a whole gamut of systemic problems like IBS or heart disease, and the list went on and on and on. And how much of it was true? None of it. And how much of it was true for the 390,000 people that we've helped so far? None of it. I've never had a single person come back to me and say, "Oh, by the way, do you remember at the retreat when I was discussing that I thought I got MS? Well, I went for some tests and I have." Look, I'm not saying that in that 390,000 people, there aren't people who subsequently had MS. But what I'm saying is, because there will be, clearly, because statistically, with that quantity of people, there's going to be people that have got heart disease and MS and all sorts of conditions. The point I'm trying to make is, no anxious person that I've ever known has said, "Oh, I think it might be MS, I think it might be heart disease, I think it might be cancer," and it has turned out to be that within their condition. Yeah, and that's the difference. But the biggest thing with health anxiety is that you shouldn't be thinking this stuff. I don't focus on my health anymore. I did. I remember when you can see here on my face, this mole. It was started as a beauty spot. It was flat when I was a kid. I've always had it, but this one here, just above it, I haven't always had. It was about probably 5 or 6 years ago. We were on holiday in Mallorca, and Beth turned to me and said, "Oh, Charles, you've got a lump come up above your beauty spot." And I said, "Well, have I?" Yes, I have. She said, "That's come up really quickly. That wasn't there yesterday." And I said, "Well, seems strange, but yeah." And she said, "You ought to get it checked, really, whilst you're here," because we were there for 2 weeks, and she wanted me to go and get it checked. I said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Anyway, the next day she said to me, "Did you go and get that checked?" Because she stays, by the pool or on the beach, and I often get up because my brain needs engagement. I can't be bored by a pool reading a book. I need to get up and look around. So she said to me, "Did you go to pack and get that looked at?" And I went, "Oh no, I forgot." And she said, "Well, do it today when you go for your walk." Yeah, okay. Anyway, day later, Did you go?" "No, didn't go." "Look, you need to go." And I said, "Yeah, okay, okay, yeah, yeah, I'll go." Anyway, ultimately, I didn't go. And then we got back to England. It was probably a couple of weeks later that she said, "You need to go and see the doctor." And I walked in, sat down with the doctor, and I remember it to this day. And I said, "Hello, doctor. I don't think I've met you before. Are you new?" And he said, "Well, yeah, relatively new, yeah." And I said, "Oh, okay. How long have you been here?" He said, "4 years." And I went, "Oh, okay." And it was at that point I realized I hadn't been to the doctors for 4 years. This is years after I recovered from anxiety. And he said, so what brings you here? And I said, well, it's just this. The wife wanted me to get it checked out. So he got this little magnifying glass, looked at it, and he said, oh, it's fine. And I said, well, thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Shook his hand and walked out. And it wasn't until afterwards I thought, that's strange. I hadn't met him. That was 4 years that he'd been there and I'd met him. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been to the doctors anyway. But the point I'm trying to make is I went from a chronic housebound agoraphobic with panic disorder and eating disorder and health anxiety and all of that stuff to nothing. And since then, it's just like, yeah, whatever. Okay, I'll get it checked out. It's almost gone the other way, and I don't give it constant. I'll get chest pain if I've got some indigestion. I just go, oh, indigestion, and I move on. Whereas, oh, I'm dying. I've been on the phone to an ambulance when I had health anxiety because everything was catastrophic. I catastrophized every potential illness and I was checking myself and rechecking myself. In fact, I did it so much, I did nothing else. That's the point. All of my intellect, all of my time, all of my energy was dedicated to seeing if I was okay in every way and staying at home to stay safe and avoiding confrontation and avoiding social interaction and avoiding doing the things that I should have been doing for so long. So at 26, when I recovered, it all went away. But it went away because of science. It didn't go away because of therapy or talking or, tea and sympathy. It didn't go away because of medication, because it can't go away because of those things. Anxiety is fear disorder. And to get rid of fear disorder, you've got to do the opposite of what created the disorder. Just like going from unfit to fit and back to unfit, it's a process. If you get fit through moving your body correctly and perhaps even losing some weight by reducing your calorie intake, you get to your optimum physical wellness, which is what fitness is. If you sit in front of the television from that point on and eat ice cream and don't move, you lose fitness. So you go to disorder again. So order is wellness and disorder is disorder. Not illness. Illness is clinical, but this is disorder. A lot of people are very disordered, but they're not clinically ill. They're just disordered in many ways. So they haven't got any equilibrium between the systems of the body, and that's what wellness is. It's when you're in balance. And I just lost my balance. I was born with the predisposition to suffering from anxiety, and I developed an anxiety condition, a disorder. So I went from disorder back to order, and that's what all you have to do. But in doing that, people just don't understand because anxiety is so catastrophic, because it hits literally every square millimeter of your body and brain, and because it's perceived to be frailty and it's perceived to be mental illness, and you're told that you need to relax, and everybody believes that they're ill, frail, vulnerable, incapable, and it's just not true. The truth is that it's the exact opposite to that. It just feels that way. And so a lot of people with anxiety find it very difficult to understand that moving back from disorder to order brings about total removal of what they perceive to be mental illness. Because you do feel a bit mad, you do feel a bit out of control. And then you're taking tablets to confirm that. And then you're talking to people who are telling you you'll never recover and you've always got to manage it through ignorance or through commercial bias. But ultimately, they're telling you that. So the whole message around mental illness is very, very negative, which is why I try to turn it on its head and say to you, if you suffer from an anxiety condition, it's not because you're frail or vulnerable or stupid or just not listening or never going to succeed in life. It's because you're amazing. And that's why you suffer. But you just don't understand that science yet. So, health anxiety is about inappropriate focus on yourself and your wellness, and it will drive you to do the most incredible things to get reassurance that there's nothing wrong with you. But it doesn't make it mental illness. It's not mental illness, it's just a manifestation of your underlying anxiety condition. And that, I promise you, can be completely removed if you do what your brain and body needs in order to completely remove it. But if you don't do that, you'll always stay anxious potentially. So what we do is show you the fastest route to recovery, using your brain and body in the way it should be used in order to create recovery and remove all of those inappropriate risk assessments, the what ifs, and to prevent you from going into fight or flight and producing all the physical symptoms. It is that easy. And if everybody in school had this, there would be no anxiety because you'd know how not only how to cure yourself, but you'd also know how to carry that through life. It really is that simple. I hope this has reassured you. As an ex health anxiety sufferer, I promise you that your recovery is not only possible, it's imminent, but only if you do what it takes. But do not get up tomorrow morning with the belief that you can't be free of this sentence, which is what it feels like. You don't have to live a life like this. Take care. Lots of love.